troubles, we sometimes forget what a good life we had before white people came. We had everything we needed. The earth was our mother, and the animals were our spiritual brothers. In those days, we shared everything. It was a great source of strength. We didn't measure a man by what he had, but by what he gave away. And our land was the heart of our culture. All our structures and works of art, all our ceremonies and everyday traditions came from our love for the land. Our respect for life taught us never to waste anything. We used every part of an animal or salmon and took only dead trees for firewood.
Creator gave us everything we need to live. In addition, the money that could give us our lives to live on. There's everything created in this earth that we can live on. Fish, deer, elk. What he created in this earth, you know, that's not to waste.
Before white people came, we were proud and successful. But in the last 100 years, we've lost nearly everything. And our big troubles really began when we lost our lands. The land is the basis of Indian culture. The land is the culture, and without it, we cannot survive as a people. We could have wiped out the first white people who came here, but we helped them and traded with them instead. We shared our land with them. We felt sorry for them because they didn't have any land of their own. What we didn't know is that white people see land as a possession that can be bought and sold. Indians have always seen land as something to be used with respect. It's really a question of fairness. When white people got strong enough to live on our land without our help, they just took everything and forced us to live on scraps of land. Once they had us on reserves, they took away our rights to hunt and fish whenever we wanted to. They used the Indian Act to divide us and strip many of us of all our Indian rights. They created the non-status Indian, someone who is Indian in culture, but non-Indian in law. So what did we get for sharing with white people? In northeastern BC, Peace River country, the only federal government treaty in the province gave each Indian $12 and 160 acres, plus $5 a year. That's the best deal we got in BC. There are some small Hudson Bay treaties on Vancouver Island. The city of Victoria sits on land bought from Indians for 371 blankets. For the rest of BC, we got nothing, except our reserves. Sir James Douglas, one of the first governors, said we could have as much land as we wanted, but the politicians who came after him didn't keep his word. They found many ways to cut down our reserves. Settlers, churches, governments, they've all taken Indian land.
It seems that any time they want easements for highways, pipelines, railways, or power lines, they go out of their way to put them on Indian land, because Order in Council 1036 allows them to expropriate Indian land for utilities if they want to. Seabird Island, like many other reserves, has all four. The railway is noisy, and every day when the coal train goes through, everything gets covered in coal dust. The highway, which runs right in front of some of our houses, is dangerous. A child has been killed on the highway, and many pets have been killed too.
This land, north of Fort St. John, was once an Indian reserve. More than 18,000 acres of some of the best agricultural land in the Peace River area. In 1945, the Fort St. John band was pressured into selling this land for less than half its market value. Local white people said the Indians weren't using the land properly and demanded that the government buy the land and open it up to white farmers. The Fort St. John band didn't know what the value was in dollars, so the government paid them only $3.89 an acre, while the average going price at the time was $9 an acre.
McLean's Lake here is in the middle of Cornwall Reserve. Years ago, our ancestors used to use this lake for pasture land and irrigation, but white ranchers came and dammed the lake and diverted the waters for their own use. A white rancher right next to Ashcroft Cornwall Reserve is the only one allowed to irrigate his fields with McLean's Lake water, Indian water. The only water we're allowed to use is for drinking or taking a bath. We can't even grow a lawn around our house. Over the years, we've been humiliated by tourists and others that call themselves first-class citizens. They look at our land and call us laziest people in the world. But if we had water, we could work our lands and have a gold mine of our own.
At Alert Bay, the Anglican Church owns 150 acres right smack in the middle of the Nimkish Reserve. This land was leased years ago by the Synod from some fellow who shouldn't have owned it in the first place. They no longer need the land, so they're willing now to sell it to Indian or non-Indian. We feel that land should revert to the Nimkish, as it says in the terms of the lease that it was held in trust for Indians to begin with.
When the church came in, the Indians understood what's good. Religious is a good thing. So they give them a chance to build a church right here. And next thing you know why they sold. They got away with many lands in that manner. But the people that sacrificed themselves to become a minister should have lived up to that Bible they read every Sunday. They shouldn't be doing things like that to the poor Indians. I don't think it's fair.
The people at Smockham had to remove all the bones from the cemetery because of the erosion that was taking place, and there was no way to stop the erosion. And the erosion, I believe, was caused by the people in Pemberton Valley wanting to lower their water level, so they asked to dredge the channel between Lillooet Lake and Tenace Lake with complete disregard to Indian people or their land or even their graveyards.
It's not just the land, it's our way of life. As we lost our land, we lost our hunting and fishing grounds. The Royal Proclamation in 1763 guaranteed us our land and our rights to hunt and fish. But government agents have been trying for years to stop us from taking the food we need. Sometimes the fish agents offer to supply us with salmon. They don't seem to understand that hunting and fishing are as much our way of life as the food itself. And conservation is the excuse they use for restricting us. The white man destroys nature and says Indians must not fish or hunt except by his rules.
At Tonka Lake, to the northwest of Merritt, where Indian people have food fished for hundreds of years, today we're not allowed to do that because the lake has been set aside as a fish preserve for sports fishermen, which is an example of commercial, recreational fishing taking precedent over native food fishing.
The Indians in Nitnat, why, they got to have permits to catch the fish they need for their own use. But when they opened that place up for commercial fishermen, those 3 pack boats went down, was loaded down with fish. That was fine, because, that's big people's fish. They got millions of dollars, that's fine, and then he can waste that fish down the bottom of that sea. But if it's an Indian like these people, you bother, and right here in this river for their own use. You right here was a place. When these pack boats went down, you see, well, they had hired gravel trucks to haul them out of there through logging roads. There were fish dropping off in those trucks, you know, scattered all along the logging road. Logging trucks come along, they just squash them to nothing. I suppose that's what you call wasteful. But it's fine and dandy because that belonged to the Canada people.
I was stopped on the Trans-Canada Highway, and there must have been thousands of cars going by. He picked me out, and he showed his badge, and he said, "I am a fisheries officer. He said, may I search your vehicle?" I just said yes, and my gosh, he just went in and started looking through all our camping equipment, and the way he done it, you know, well, it seemed as though we were guilty, and we didn't even think that we'd done anything wrong. And he explained later that people do find ingenious ways of hiding fish, but I wouldn't hide fish in my bedrolls or, you know, my fresh laundry, and they don't even ask whether, you know, whether you're guilty or not. They know for a fact if you're Indian, you're guilty. That's the way I see it.
Game is getting harder to find, too. Logging roads cutting through our forests, mines eating away our mountains, and company towns populating our valleys have driven the animals away. Game wardens are another problem. Alexi Jack, who lived just south of Burns Lake, was fined $1,000 for killing a caribou. He was charged with hunting out of season and hunting big game with a .22. He didn't have any money at the time because the Indian agent had cut off his pension check, claiming that Alexi Jack was making money from his small farm. Since he wasn't making any money and his family needed meat, he went hunting on his own trap line. And he says he'll continue to hunt whenever he needs meat because he figures that's his right as an Indian.
We always notice from time to time where trophy hunters have come in and just kill a 4 or 5 point buck or a bull moose and just take the head off for a trophy and leave the rest to rot, or just don't give a darn about the food aspect of the moose. Every Indian that I've ever seen hunt has never wasted anything. Why should there be restrictions on people that have never wasted? And why should there be restrictions on the people that practiced the shrewdest kinds of conservation before the white man came here, so that the white man could enjoy the hunting of deer, the hunting of moose and other animals?
The last 100 years have been hard on Indian people. Imagine having everything you've grown up with attacked or taken away. Our old people have been through that, and so have many, many others who didn't survive it. The white education system we didn't want took away more than it gave. How many Indian children had their language beaten out of them? And how many today know the history of their tribe? White people outlawed the potlatch because they didn't understand it. They said we'd impoverish ourselves. In our society, nobody minded if a man got rich because they knew he'd share it. Our tribal systems were outlawed, and we were told to elect our chiefs on a regular basis. We were never conquered, but 75% of our people died of white men's diseases. Smallpox sometimes came with traders' blankets. Every aspect of Indian life was attacked. Whenever there was a difference in culture or tradition, we were told ours was wrong, and we had to conform to the ways of white society. Yet white people ask why some of us can't cope with the life they've forced on us. They see us as lazy, incompetent, and unsophisticated people and wonder why. How are we supposed to respond to the destruction of our way of life? Adopt instantly a culture they took thousands of years to develop? It's not surprising that some of us lost our pride in being Indian.
You know, at one time the Quakios were a highly organized and proud group of people. But many years ago now, one of the Quakios bands reached a point where it seemed to them that it was useless to continue being Indian. Being Indian in a world ruled by whites had brought them a lot of suffering and pain. So they decided it might be better to become white. Under the leadership of Chief Biliasu, the Cape Mudge Indian Band tore down all of their longhouses and built a giant bonfire to burn their potlatch masks and regalia, trying to rid themselves of a culture and heritage which no longer seemed to have any value for them.
There was this old Indian standing by the river, waiting to spear a fish. As he was doing this, he thought of the wealth of the white man and the power of wealth. As he was thinking about this, he saw this old can drifting down the river. He went and got it. As he was bringing it back to shore, he accidentally rubbed on it, and pow, out pops a genie. He says, "Master, I will grant you 3 wishes." Right away he gets excited. "My first wish," he says, "I want to be the wealthiest, richest white prince." Pow, becomes an elegant prince. His second wish was, "I want to control the world." Pow, becomes a king. And his third wish was, "I want to be happy and content." Pow, turns back into an Indian.
At this point in time in history, it is our right to declare victory as nations of Indian people, simply because we have survived.
The policy for 100 years has been to assimilate us, blend us into the melting pot. Now that we've made it this far, we have to find ways to develop a 20th century Indian culture so we can keep our own ideas and values and still function in today's world. In some places, it's already happening.
Say watch. Sleep. How much is that
For those who want to get involved in the dances and the songs and the history, there's no limit to what depth they can go to in their culture at the SAM. They can come in to learn to carve and learn the elements of West Coast design, but to have true expression in the art form is to also get in and understand the actual culture, the history, and the legends. Kasan is only as strong as the people who work for it. We are a group, we work together, and we will achieve together. Likewise, the carvers, their strength is Kasan. Kasan is only as strong as its carvers. The carvers are as strong as Kasan.
This would hold your weight. If you make it any smaller, you'd sink in the snow. So these are the, that's how you tell what, you know, what size snowshoe you, what size to make. And the webbing is the most important part, and it's the hardest part to make. This one has to be really strong because it holds the whole snowshoe.
Daddy, look at eyes on her shoe.
So you wrap it like this? Yeah, you wrap it now. About 3 times.
In Mount Currie, we didn't like what was happening to our children. A lot of our children were dropping out of school at grade 9 and coming back home and doing nothing. So we took out 21 and put them in the top of the gymnasium for the whole year. And then the following year, in 1973, we decided that we would take over the whole school. During the year, we started setting up the type of curriculum we felt was good for our children. So right now, we teach the BCA curriculum, and then we put innovative programs, like teaching the history of Mount Currie, Indian language.